Would you repeat the question for me?
Yeah, you seem to have a problem paying attention to the questions being asked of you today. I'll repeat it for you again. Do you think that it's okay that these entities that are blacklisting companies, all of the companies on the list that are blacklisted, are conservative outlets?
Do I think that it is okay for a company, for a nonprofit organization to develop tools that offer rankings, in other words, offer speech of criticism, critical speech about certain businesses? Yes, I think that's okay because that is protected First Amendment activity.
So you think it's okay for the federal government to be using our tax dollars to basically, through a proxy, blacklist one side of the aisle? You think that's okay?
I do not, because that is not what is happening.
Really? How so?
Yes.
Then why are all the companies on the list, the blacklist, conservative groups?
I think that's something that conservatives would need to answer.
I now recognize Dr. Franks for her 5-minute opening remarks.
Thank you. As noted in my introduction, I am a law professor at the George Washington Law School, and I specialize in the intersection of the First Amendment, technology, and civil rights. I'm also the president of the Cyber Civil Rights Initiative, which is the leading U.S. nonprofit organization focused on combating image-based sexual abuse. The fact that critical speech may lead to negative consequences for those who are criticized, such as a decline in popularity or in revenue, merely indicates that the speech is effective, not that it is censorship. Competition is not censorship. Counter-speech is not censorship. Research is not censorship. Providing information to businesses about other businesses is not censorship. Efforts to convince consumers, advertisers, and the public that certain content is false, is fraudulent, harmful, extremist, harassing, or exploitative is not censorship. None of this changes just because the government may have provided funding for the speech in question. While, as the Supreme Court has held, government officials cannot attempt to coerce private parties in order to punish or suppress views that the government disfavors, the government is allowed to speak on its own behalf and to take sides in controversial matters. The government is allowed, for example, to promote military enlistment and war bonds during wartime without also having to promote messages that discourage those efforts. The government is allowed to fund certain messages or perspectives and not others. Misinformation researchers have been vilified, defunded, harassed, and threatened, including by members of Congress. This is government officials using taxpayer dollars to instigate hearings, subpoenas, lawsuits, document requests, and investigations to literally shut down speech that they do not like. And unlike the federal funding programs attacked in this hearing, these actions by government officials are not merely encouraging speech that they prefer, but punishing the speech that they fear. These efforts have been chillingly effective. It was announced recently that the Stanford Internet Observatory, a cross-disciplinary program that provided in-depth analyses of social media's role in child exploitation and the spread of false information about elections and vaccines, may be shutting down amid the political and legal attacks that have, as the Washington Post says, have caused a pall on efforts to study online misinformation, attacks that have included lawsuits, document requests, threats of physical harm, including the targeting of student volunteers. This is what censorship looks like. Government-led efforts to directly suppress disfavored speech as well as to leverage third parties to assist in those efforts. The harassment and silencing of misinformation researchers, especially in a year when a record-breaking number of elections will take place around the world, threatens free speech and democracy on an unprecedented scale. If Congress genuinely wants to address the threat of censorship, it should start by acknowledging that the call is coming from inside the House. Thank you.
I want to start with you, Ms. Franks. I believe you said the government has the right to participate in expressing its viewpoint. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't, respectfully, Ms. Franks, I don't think that's what we're really talking about here today. We're not talking about the government expressing its viewpoints. What we're really talking about is when the government pays and uses taxpayer dollars to fund these entities that we're talking about here today that actually discredit some of these news sites and drives away their advertisers. Do you think that's fair as well?
What is fair is for the government to be able to fund projects and organizations that do certain things with those funds that may include competing in the marketplace of ideas, and they may be winning in the marketplace of ideas, but the government is not making those choices. And when certain news outlets lose in the marketplace of ideas, they may want to blame the government for that, but maybe they're just losers.
So, okay, Ms. Franks, do you think?
It's actually Dr. Franks.
What's that?
It's actually Dr. Franks.
Okay, Dr. Franks, sorry. Ms. Jonas here said that when she was looking at these entities and the organizations that they had blacklisted, every single one of them was a conservative-leaning organization. Do you think that's fair as well? Is that okay? Dr. Franks?
Use a different name, so I wasn't sure you were talking to me.
Yeah, I'm still talking to you. I'm still looking at you. I'm still talking to you.
Would you repeat the question for me?
Yeah, you seem to have a problem paying attention to the questions being asked of you today. Why are all the companies on the list, the blacklist, conservative groups?
I think that's something that conservatives would need to answer.
No, I think that's something you need to answer.
I'm not
Because
a
we're talking
representative
about
of any of these
censorship
companies.
here, and there's only
Yes.
one group of people being censored.
No one is being censored.
Miss
according
Eunice
to what
here,
is being
Miss
described
Eunice here
today.
admitted that she's not even a Republican. She leans left. Yet she's telling us that all of the companies on the blacklist are conservative groups. How do you square that, doctor?
I don't have to square that because, as I said, the focus
I know, because
here-
you don't have to make any sense, do you?
May I answer the question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Right.
The First Amendment has certain principles and certain rules. People may not like them. People may disagree with them. People may not like the fact that someone out there may say conservatives are all bad or liberals are all bad. The correct response to not liking that is to engage in your own speech, as is often happening here. It is not to say, oh, this is censorship, we're being silenced. It's simply to say, we disagree with what's being said here. Try to compete, and if you are good enough, maybe you'll win.
Miss Jonas, what do you have to say about what Dr. Franks just said?
First of all, I want to be
Microphone.
I want to be clear that this wasn't just about NewsGuard and GDI. The government was funding hundreds, at least 300 tools and technologies that were designed to censor speech. Some of them weren't even pretending to censor foreign disinformation, quote unquote disinformation. Of course, that's a subjective term. So they were hosting COVID disinformation challenges where they were giving grants to companies who showed that they were the best at censoring COVID disinformation. COVID is not really a national security or foreign topic, even if it has some tinges of that. So this was about the government using its authority. The government can't use its authority, can't use its power, and can't use its money in order to censor views it doesn't like. It's the government, yes, it has its a right to censor. To express its own views, but not to use those views to censor. That's where it stops. And the court expressly said that in Vulo recently, actually.
Mr. Weingarten, I'm going to allow you to comment on this exchange.
I just say briefly, we've heard a robust defense of the government's purported right to speak, which, as we've established, really looks like a right to censor, and the censors portrayed as the victims here, but American speech en masse has been censored by this censorship industrial complex on a slew of issues that expressly reflect protected political speech. And if a stop isn't put to it, we're going to lose this right in toto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.